what I found extraordinary, and you've mentioned a few of them, you talked about monarchy, though you talked about monarchy in terms of Mar-a-Lago, and my joke about it being the new summer palace of the Royal American Presidency. Remember, cast your mind back, you weren't there, though of course I'm much nearer to it than you are, to the events of the American Revolution, and that final moment as they're all coming from the famous building in Philadelphia, and allegedly Franklin is asked, "What have we got?" And that famous response, "A republic, if we can keep it." But it's a republic that had at its heart a monarchy, that had at its heart a presidency which retained and was deliberately given, particularly, I think, as a result of the activities of people like, you may correct me, John Adams and Alexander Hamilton, so much of the essence of the power of a British king. So that one of the great progenitors of the revolution, somebody that everybody on this side of the Atlantic gets very excited about, Tom Paine, actually, you'll remember, writes this denunciatory letter to the man to whom he'd been so close, George Washington, when he revisits America after his imprisonment, that's Paine's imprisonment, during the French Revolution, and denounces poor old Washington as a pseudo-king with as many petitions in his chest as James II. Well, suddenly we've seen another president who can actually realize that power. It seems to me that Trump, I've been trying to think, and actually one or two articles recently, particularly I think the report on Frank Luntz, the great American pollster's view on all of this. He is now doing something which, remember, we all thought, I mean, you probably didn't, but most people on this side of the Atlantic thought Trump was a bit of an ass. I think there's another A word that Americans are fond of, which I shall not sully my channel with. Now he's being compared by the outstanding modern analyst of American politics to Franklin D. Roosevelt. In other words, here, and he's actually saying, Luntz is saying he's better than Roosevelt. When Roosevelt comes to power at the heights of the Great Depression, the depths of the Great Depression, he's got a gigantic majority in both houses of Congress. Despite all the talk at the last, in the election at the end of last year about Trump sort of sweeping everything, he's got the narrowest majorities in both the Senate and the House of Representatives. Nevertheless, he has been able to do pretty much everything that he said he was going to do, and he's done it like a king. And we'll talk. Well, I'm not going to forget the golf course. I'm not going to forget the extraordinary humiliation, in my view, the entirely justified humiliation of Keir Starmer. But I just want to keep on analysing this idea of king. I mean, look at those moments when Trump has just been sworn in, that cold January day when allegedly it was so cold the inauguration couldn't take place outside. The swearing in is in the rotunda. A few minutes later, he's at the desk in the Oval Office, and you've got Stephen Miller, the man who's been doing so much of the background work, coming in with this gigantic pile of documents and pens, and suddenly the signature goes on them. But it's not done in private, it's done as theatre, it's done as performance. You get the holding up of the document, this gigantic signature, you get the flinging of the pen, you get the close-up of the actual document, and do you know what? Things happened. This is genuinely royal. This is back to an age when kings actually had power, when they actually did things. And suddenly we've got so used, haven't we, on your side of the, I mean, remember who his predecessor was, the doddery old Biden, and nobody had any idea whether Biden thought anything, did anything, and he couldn't say anything anyway. Suddenly you've got a politician who does something. It's not simply gesture. It's the most ancient form of ceremony. I mean, again, I'm so fascinated by this because exactly in my period of history, the end of the Middle Ages, the beginning of the modern period, you replace the usual way in which you'd authenticated documents in the Middle Ages, which is a great wax seal. You replace it with what's called the sign manual. That's the signature. And it connects the monarch to, because obviously anybody could hold a seal. Anybody did hold a seal. The king didn't apply the seal himself, the chancellor or the secretary or the Lord Privy Seal, whoever it was. But suddenly, when it's a document and you can see it, you look at the signatures of a Henry VIII, this huge, heavy scrawl, the signature even better of Elizabeth, with these dizzying whirls of italic script. Trump's signature is exactly like that. But unlike the signatures of a modern sovereign, again, remember when Keir Starmer coming again, actually once again prostrating himself before the great god Trump with a letter from a fellow monarch, with a letter from King Charles, what did Trump do? He barely read it. He looked at the signature. What a signature, he said. Charles's great sprawling R. It's the fusion then. What I think is so remarkable about Trump, it's the fusion of real power and symbolic power. That means it actually changes the political situation, but the most simple person can directly connect it with this man.
What you've discussed really triggers a number of thoughts in my mind. Firstly, you mentioned that Luntz brings up the comparison with FDR, but I'd be much more interested in your thoughts. And does Trump trigger in your mind any historical connections?
Yes. I mean, exactly the point that I made with real monarchs. I mean, remember, we all should start going back to the book that is the most subtle analysis of the relations, or what used to be the relations between American government and British government, which of course is Walter Badger's great book on the English Constitution. And remember, he is constantly there comparing monarchy with republic. At the time that this is written, from the 1850s to 1867, there is only one real republic in the world. That's you. That's America. And the big point that he's making there is American government is boring. Royal government in Britain has got this wonderful sort of panache of monarchy, of crowns, of robes, of strutting troops, of noble buildings and whatever. And what he did, but he then also said, of course, the monarch doesn't do anything, despite the fact that Victoria very much thought that she did. That really, he said, all the trappings of monarchy, of the House of Lords, of the household cavalry, of Buckingham Palace, he called them the dignified bits of the Constitution. He then pointed out that real power is wielded by somebody just as boring as the American presidents of the middle of the 19th century, which are the British prime ministers. Again, besuited, operating round a table, sitting in front of green baize. But you see, what's remarkable about Trump is that he fuses these two kinds of power. He fuses the dignified, the flamboyance. He's invented his own ceremonies. It's quite extraordinary. He's actually invented his own ceremonies, and he's turned. We'll talk about the golf business in a minute, the importance of the diplomacy and the power politics of sport. But he's fused this with doing real things.